there's the theme of how good it feels when you are in a room and you can read it perfectly. That's like it's a superpower. And then the idea that you can use that to manipulate people and gain power in spaces that would never even look at you, and how good that feels until it feels kind of bad and tiring and all of that. But then I also, the idea that I think this might be a movie about like loving yourself and not having to be something for other people.
Hello, and welcome back to The Director's Cut, brought to you by the Directors Guild of America. In this episode, a woman claims she can speak to the dead in director Anu Valia's drama, We Strangers. The film tells the story of Rayelle, a rural housekeeper who takes on a new and enigmatic job for a therapist client. But after she impulsively claims she can speak to the dead, Rayelle finds herself in an odd position of power and an ever-deepening web of deceit. In addition to We Strangers, Valia's other directorial credits include the feature film Brooklyn Love Stories and episodes of the series And Just Like That, The After Party, She-Hulk Attorney at Law, Never Have I Ever, Aquafina is Nora from Queens, and Mixed-ish. Following a screening of the film at the DGA Theater in Los Angeles, Valia spoke with director Janicza Bravo about filming We Strangers. Listen on for their spoiler-filled conversation.
Woo!
Hi.
Hello.
How's it going?
I'm glad that we found our spots on this stage.
We were really confused about stage left and stage right, and that's really important, I know. Thank you all so much for being here. We really appreciate you spending your Saturday afternoon with us. I'm going to jump in. Well, hey, first, congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Let's jump in. So this is your first feature.
Yeah.
I met you soon after your short film, Lucia, Before and After. I wanted to make sure I got the title right. I met you soon after that. You had won the jury prize at Sundance. This is around 2017. I'm curious if you can tell us a little bit about what the road from that moment, which I imagine you have lots to say, this moment of winning, to getting the feature. Can you talk to us a little bit about the road from there to here?
Yeah, I mean, it was long because I had written a version of this movie. This movie changed a bunch, which I'd love to talk to you about. But like, I'd written the first version of this movie in 2014. And it was like obviously the film changed. I guess not obviously, you guys don't know me, but like
as a feature or as a short? As a feature.
I'd written it. It was different in many different ways. The kernel of the idea was the same, but kind of the plot of the film was different. And, the road to making a movie is so long. And so I had in the interim, I was like, well, I'm going to keep making shorts. And then I made Lucia Before and After. And I was like, oh, maybe now that I made this short that people really love, but it wasn't a proof of concept for the feature. So I sort of was still kicking around trying to make this kind of weird, esoteric meditation on race and class, and getting the money for that movie was very difficult.
I'm shocked to hear that. That seems like the things that people throw money at. No?
It was I remember like pitching it so much and having like, when you're pitching a movie and you're like trying to make it have more plot than it has, like trying to get people excited to make a movie that's like a character study. And so that took a very long time. And in the meantime, I think I was very single-minded about like, I have to get this movie made and I have to do it the way I want to. And because I was so stubborn, in maybe good and bad way, you learn a lot in that journey too. It just took a long time. We shot this movie in 2023. So from the first draft, it was about 9 years.
You say you had to make the movie the way that you wanted to. Can you define what you mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, like, I grew up watching movies by Agnes Varda, Fellini, Tarkovsky, Kieslowski. I wanted to make a movie that was a character piece that was a study about a woman in a very particular place, a place that I know very well. And I wanted to make a film that moved the way that I see the world. And that is a bit poetic, a bit meditative, steeped in metaphor, all these things that are not in the American market, like really grabby.
Feeling less commercial.
Yeah. Yeah. And I kind of, and the way movies get financed in America, and it's a very American story. So there was no way to get money outside of this country. And so because of that, it was just, even to get money for the budget that it just was not an easy journey. Yeah.
You said it was always a meditation on race and class. And I'm curious, I'm thinking about what the experience of reading the script might be before, say, knowing it's yours, before there's Kirby, and what the sort of like road to financing it looks like. Because I think oftentimes, unless you're very specific about who your protagonist is, I think we read things in the invisible, and the invisible tends to be white. And so I'm wondering, had you always imagined that you were going to work with someone Black? Had you thought about working with someone brown? Had you imagined a white actress? Like what does that look like in terms of casting? And then once you get Kirby, does it change at all?
Well, so, the role, there was like a little time, I actually had people say like, should this character be Indian like you? And I was like, no, this is a story about a Black woman. But, which people always kind of ask, because, there's a lot of conversation of, can you write a character? Can you make a movie about someone that does not look like you, does not go through the world like you do? And for me, I thought, this person has a lot of me. I feel so close to her, but she also moves through the world in a very different way than I do. So my responsibility as an artist, if I'm really wanting to tell a story about race in America as I have witnessed it, as I've also experienced it being a brown woman in the world, but absolutely not, I'm not a Black woman. I've not had her experiences. I also, if I want to tell a story about like the socioeconomic divides I see, the racial microaggressions that I've witnessed, what assimilating makes you feel. And if I distinctly choose to tell a story that is only about an Indian woman because I am Indian and I have to tell that story, I think I'm like, for me, this is just for me because I'm myself as an artist and I have to say what I'm interested in, that I'm really kind of, I'm not observing the world truthfully, because like I'm from a town right outside Gary. This woman's, Kirby's, Kirby created this role. But Ray is a mix of what Kirby has done and the women I have seen and my friends and people I've talked to and my own experiences. We've created this amalgamation of a person. That was Ray. That's why I wrote Ray to be. And then with a lot of other input. And then Kirby comes in and then completely makes it her own and adds so much. And we had a lot of talks and changed the character. I'm learning as I'm making this film. Like I think any filmmaker and any artist, any movie you make, you keep learning. You keep like that curiosity. That's sort of like, oh, that's interesting. Okay, I didn't know that. Okay, this is going to change now. Because I don't approach making movies or making any art as like, I have something to say. It's more, I'm curious about the world. I see this in my dad. My dad does this a lot as like an immigrant who came to this country. He's not worried about getting it wrong. He just wants to ask questions and he learns. He learns so much without judgment. And that is how I want to be as an artist, as someone that moves through the world and goes, oh, this is very weird. And I like will notice like this, how this white woman is speaking to this Black person. This is very odd. I'm going to put this in the movie and see, you know what I mean? And like, my job is to be kind of like a curioso. Like I put my eye up to the keyhole and go like, oh, this is very interesting. And I plan to do that forever as an artist. And also my job is to learn and grow and hear feedback. And also, you know what I mean? And so is that clear? Am I
Totally
being very, but so it's interesting because I wrote so many drafts of this movie because I would go back home, share the script, not share the script, share ideas, see things, and like, I was always very careful I was always very aware of like, there are some stories that are not yours to tell. And also, if you're approaching a film, which is, I want to take this woman who is always the secondary, tertiary, fourth person in a story. The lens is never on her. I want to put the lens on her. She deserves to be a main character. This is where I feel very close to her. She is a chameleon. She can move and change and wear a mask and be different to whatever is needed of her. And I feel that way a lot. And there's a real weight of being a good assimilator. She's code switching. She's changing herself. She's always wearing masks. And that is, I know it in a different way, but that weight and what that makes you feel and that discomfort, living in that discomfort, that's what I wanted to create. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think you go, I don't know how this makes you feel kind of weird. Let me interrogate that. I hope, that's the hope. Yeah.
You said that when pitching the movie or taking the movie out, you were artificially finding, I guess, something kind of propulsive or something kind of sexy to just sort of bring into the room. If you had to narrow 2-3 things that feel like the core of the film, what would you say those are?
The core of, oh man, that's a beautiful question because so the core of the movie really is about how there's the theme of how good it feels when you are in a room and you can read it perfectly. That's like it's a superpower. And then the idea that you can use that to manipulate people and gain power in spaces that would never even look at you, and how good that feels until it feels kind of bad and tiring and all of that. That is at the core of the movie. But then I also, the idea that community is what saves us, and community is what and these are all like that's not going to translate to a podcast.
Yes.
These are all.
Right?
Yes. And there's like a thank you. Janicza is going to interpret the film, but there's a lot of layers to the film that I sometimes don't love over intellectualizing, because you might look at the movie and go, oh, that's not like, it's all just supposed to be like a one big feeling, but community being that's what makes life worth living it's so simple, but that's in the movie. Like Ray has the life with, it's a very simple idea. She has the life with her family and her friend and her friend's kids. And that's like a space where it's very stressful to have like, so much you need to do for other people, but that obviously is gives and gives and gives. And then obviously the opposite is like when you kind of are in your own world and you're isolated and don't lean on others, that's so lonely. And then kind of I think maybe actually I was going to say these are all layers that go on top of each other, but I actually think the deep, deep core is Ray goes on this journey to like love herself. Which I actually just have to say that like Tina Lifford, who plays Willie, the mom, Ray's mom in the movie, we talked about it. Woo! Isn't she so great? She does so much. Like, there were some scenes on the cutting room floor that were just for
just for you,
for me. I just shot them for me. But there's one scene that I'm sad that just couldn't really make it. But she is so great, and we were talking about the film, and there were many days where she just I'm just remembering how much she gave. Like how much she gave to like every scene she's in. She takes those words and she really I see an actor giving, and I really appreciate it. But we were talking, and I was talking to her about like the deep core theme of the movie. And I said, as we were talking, I was like, oh, Tina, I think this might be a movie about like, just like loving yourself and not having to be something for other people. And I was like, oh man, I don't think I ever would have set out to tell a movie about that because I don't even know what that is. Like, it's so kind of like amorphous, but it did show up in the movie. And Kirby brought that in the movie. And then, so that kind of came like halfway through, like right before filming and through filming, that was discovered. And that I was like, I think that is really it, because I think I was subconsciously going through that myself. And so that got like infused into the film. And I think what's beautiful that I'm learning is I've always been, you hear other directors talk about movies and they have such clear, crystal clear ideas of everything. And I also, not every director, I think some directors are very open that you learn and you find. But what was so beautiful is how much, also because the movie took so long to make, and it's my first movie, how much discovery of themes and of subconscious ideas were coming as we were making the film. It was really it was very spiritual.
I'm sure it's reflective of your own evolution, having started in 2014 and having then filmed it in 2023. And then there's also the movie that happens when you actually are editing, right?
Yeah.
Which is probably different than all of those movies.
That's exactly right. Because then all of that reshuffling of the film when you're writing it and then filming it, and then it's you, and I know you're very close to your editor, and my editor, James, you sit in that room and you are so vulnerable with each other with every mistake you made. And you are also so beholden, like not beholden, you really owe the actors when you're editing to protect their performance, to protect what they've done. You know what I mean? Like when you're editing and you're like, oh, I cut to them a slightly too early. So now it feels like they're reacting like a hair earlier than they actually did. Like all this stuff that you're like, because you are manipulating people's performances in an edit, but they were so generous with their performance that then you also, you gain a very different even tenderness to everything they did for you when you're editing. That's also very spiritual. The whole experience of this was so, it was what I will say is the act of making it with the actors and then later with our editor, it felt like, and now I'm going to act this one out, but it felt like there
was another small breath that was meant to describe the experience of working with actors.
It did. It felt like and like a little blow, and Kirby and I would talk about this later because we would get very weepy with each other because there was such it was just a very trusting exchange of energy, because so much of the movie is this feeling that we're trying to capture. And like, the next movie will have more plot, sure, but I'm really grateful, but I'm really grateful that I got to make a film that, you have a woman who's pretending to be psychic and she lies and it spins out of control. That's what happens in the movie, but there's so much going on underneath the surface. And I'm really grateful I got to explore that with my like cohorts of artists. I think that's rare to get to do it at this kind of like tiny little micro level. So I'm going to hold that with me for a long time.
Speaking of your cohort, Charlotte, your cinematographer, is Hornsby her last name? Mm-hmm. Charlotte Hornsby, your cinematographer, who'd also worked on that short film with you. You'd worked together before, so you had a little bit of a history. I'm curious how you arrive at what the film is going to look like or how the camera is going to move in relation to performance. Like, how do you get to the gesture? How do you two work together, having done it together once before? How did you approach this film together?
Yeah, so Charlotte, the DP, Amelia, our production designer, Patrick, our sound designer, James, our editor, and then little later, Jay, our composer, but he was a little bit later. We all went to NYU together, just like you did. And we all have been making shorts together for a long, long time.
Family reunion.
Truly. And so for ages, we've been sharing, we have we know each other's taste very, very well. Of course, with every movie is different. Every short is different. Now we're working on this feature, but we know what color stories we like. We know we know the patterns of how we think and how we like to frame and so with Charlotte and Amelia specifically, Charlotte and I probably for longer because Amelia came on a little later, but like we were sharing images, photos, all of the stuff you do for years. And it was like movies for years. And so anytime, like when the Alice Neal exhibit, when there was an exhibit, I think it was at the Whitney in New York a few years ago, she like went there and she was like sending me pictures. She's like, I'm just crying looking at And so there was a mix of mostly just like, we're constantly sharing for We Strangers, but also it's like you're built, like right before we did this movie, like started production on it. So it was like maybe like 2-3 weeks before this was shot in Indiana. And so close to Chicago. So we went to the Gene Siskel Center because my dad was very excited. They were playing all of Kieslowski's The Decalogue. So it was like 10 hours of watching The Decalogue, like 2 weeks before we were supposed to shoot. And like The Decalogue was not a movie that I thought was going to be like, like a thing that we needed, like a must see for We Strangers. But I have to tell you, when you watch something for 10 hours with your father and the DP of your film, it is going to be the only thing you are thinking about when you're making a movie. And I have to say it was so profound, and it was so, there were things from that movie and you would have no idea what the one did, like production design elements, shot elements, things that have seeped into We Strangers. And so I think what Charlotte and I do, obviously we do the work of like really getting deeply into like how, digital storyboards and how but we actually didn't do that much. We kind of, we were a little loose, which I don't usually like to be, but we were a little bit looser. But there was so much of just, it has to feel like this. And because we have such a language from all the things that we watch, it was very, man, I'm like having trouble remembering like very specific, okay, we're sitting down, we're talking about, it would be mostly let's talk about the scene, and Charlotte would be like, we need to find more humor in this scene. It was more like that, which was funny. And then the shots would just really come to us, but it would be more like she would come sit with me because we have such a shared cinematic language, and she would just be like, the best movies, they're funny. And I think you're trying to be too serious. And I think this scene needs to be funnier. And I was like, okay. Like let's talk more about that. And so that was a very fun, interesting way to work. And not really how I've worked ever. It's never how I've worked in TV, but it was cool.
The gift of shorthand.
Yes. Oh, yes.
So you've mentioned more than Charlotte, a sizable list of collaborators that you got to work with, that you have worked with before. Is there anything that comes to mind that is a shared piece, be it a photo, be it a painting, that became kind of like the centerpiece reference that overlapped for everyone's work inside of the movie? Can you think of something?
The one movie that was always on our mind was The Headless Woman by Lucretia Martel, because that movie, everything about that movie has what we want our movie to be. I think our film is a bit more objective. It's a bit more like anthropological, as you said, which I really like, because that's like just a little bit more like I'm going to watch what's going on. Whereas this movie, The Headless Woman, is an incredibly subjective film that just follows. That movie, talk about no plot. That's a movie where this woman
vibes. A lot of vibes. Love it.
A lot of vibes. She thinks she killed a kid. And there's no mystery because you actually see early on that she hit a dog with her car. But she's driving a car and she thinks she hit a kid, but then you see that she's hit a dog. But the whole rest of the movie, she just thinks she's killed this kid. And it's such vibes. And so that was a film that like cinematically, even though it's not like such a one-to-one, was always on our mind, just in terms of being able to create, because that is such a feeling that drives through the whole movie of this like dread. And that was something that all of us really used. But I'm thinking of like a photo. There was like a lookbook that I've shared that we looked at a lot, but there wasn't one central, like, let's all go back to this. It kind of changed. I think there was a lot of that between me, the DP, and the production designer on set. Like we'd have like a few images that aren't coming to me now, even though you did tell me I should think about that. But their works, I remember having these images. And then it was in the edit, that became like a whole different thing where it would just be like, you know, certain movies we would return to remind us that it was okay that we were making a film that was a bit, that you could trust, that you were pulling the audience through with feeling. And sometimes I would question that. And also you just watch and you go, is this working? Am I still in? You know, are we still driving? But sometimes I would just question as a whole. Like I would go see like Barbie or something and be like, oh man, do you think people are going to like this? So then there'd be a couple movies we returned to that I was like, no, as long as you're with this character, I'm enjoying moving on this wavelength. Like one of those films, which is totally not, it was like Return to Seoul. Have you seen that movie? Mm-hmm. So beautiful, so different. Nothing like this film, but yeah, it just was like, man, you know, I really like seeing other artists, how their brain wavelength is. And so that's, yeah, that's all. But give me confidence. That's what it was. As a first-time filmmaker, you need to do what you can to build up your confidence.
Okay, I have a big question for you. Apparently we have 5 minutes, so I'm going to jump to the big question.
Let's go.
And I sent you this before, so you probably have a really good answer for it.
You sent it to me, but I thought it'd be nice if I was in improv mode.
You're totally loose and free. I feel like it's like living in the moment. And thank you for having me. Okay, so this is anytime I moderate, I ask this question, so it's not that hot. But I think when you're making a movie, if you've also written the movie, you started writing this in 2014. So there's the film you've written, then there's the film you've shot, then there's actually the film that we've all seen. And those are 3 different films. Even if they're very close, they're all very different, right? Because all of these things happen, especially once you make it. There are all these people now, and then you edit it, and there's just you again. I think that along the way, there are multiple small deaths that happen. And so I'm curious if there's one that immediately comes to mind that feels like this great lesson that you're super grateful for.
Can I tell you? I did read that question. I read that and I went, that is my favorite question. What a beautiful wording. I mean, come on. And I thought, I'm going to think about that later. I'm going to think of something else. I thought about that. I was like, if I think about it too much, I'm going to not have a good answer. And so I'm so glad because I actually have something that I don't love sharing because I think you want an audience to see your movie and go, this is the thing. It was this. It was always going to be this. Because that's true. The movie that you guys watch, the movie that I'm sharing with everybody is absolutely the film I wanted to make. There's no question in my mind about that. But when you ask about A Little Death, I'm excited. I'm glad you asked that because when I was making this movie, production was very, very hard, unnecessarily so. It was just hard in ways that I don't think it needed to be. And we didn't get to film a couple days. We were planning to shoot much longer, and I don't always share it because I'm like, you got to just move on. You can't live in the I wish. I don't love that energy, but I'm sharing it because I don't know. I think it might be helpful for other people, but we didn't get to film everything. And it was so heartbreaking because I didn't film this beautiful opening sequence. Really, I'm not kidding. You're going to see it in another movie and you're going to go, that rules. And we were so ready to, but we just didn't shoot it. And it really, really was this beautiful sequence that I have to say it was in, I think, almost every draft of the film. It was the thing that I never took out of the movie. It was the thing that every financier asked about. It was it was really sad. It was the thing that I think even like, it was so wonderful and so, it was the first image that came to my head for the movie. So to not film it, I didn't even, it wasn't even like people say, kill your darlings. It wasn't even like we said, we filmed it. I saw, I was like, it didn't work. I'm going to, which has happened a lot where I've shot things in short films. But I never got to put it on screen. I think sometimes, I'm sure you can relate as a filmmaker, you have images, you like collect images and scenes and stills and lines people say, you collect them in your little journal and you put them in the movie and they make the 10,000 drafts, then you prep them, then you shoot them, and then you put that image on screen that no one has seen before. And you're like, I did it. And I didn't get to shoot it. And it's not in the movie. And I actually think the movie would rule if it had it. And you know what? That's okay. That's okay. And like that, what I learned was that's only okay if you can make the thing you want to make without it. If you can find a way to truly let go of it so that you guys don't know what scene I'm talking about. You watch this movie. The ending's great. The ending works. The ending is, or not the ending. The beginning of the movie is what it's meant to be. How could it start any differently? And I'm trying to think like, what is the lesson I learned? And the lesson is, because I'm going to shoot this at some point. That image is absolutely going to go on screen. It rules. But you have to make your art anyway. That's just, I think that's what I learned from that was like, you're going to mourn things. Things aren't going to happen. Every artist has their heartbreak. And you just have to keep making things.
You mourn and you pivot.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And I think it's easy because we all have pivoted and it's been like, oh, thank God. You know what? This was better. But every once in a while you get a pivot that you go, damn, that sucks. And you just keep pivoting. So.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I love you.
Thanks for listening to another DGA Q&A. The Director's Cut is available wherever you listen to podcasts. And please share, subscribe, rate, and review. We'd love to hear your feedback, and you can help fellow film buffs find the show. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time. This podcast is produced by the Directors Guild of America.